Why did I become an artist? I don't think I actually consciously made the decision, but I started doing art probably when I was about 7, as long as I can remember actually. So as a child, that was my way, I think, of just going into my inner world. It was the way I processed everything, and yeah, it just really calmed me down. But probably rolling forward from that, I would say I really got into my painting when I was about 28. Transpersonal art. Transpersonal art would probably, how could I best sum this up? It's beyond the person, so it's beyond the physical and what we can see. So there's all the other influences that we don't take into consideration. So we're all surrounded, by our environment and how that affects us, and the energies, and also the energies that run through the body. So for me, at the moment, the transpersonal aspect is my art, and the symbology I'm using works on a very unconscious level for people that are viewing it, and it's there to shift consciousness actually in another way, and just to open people up to other aspects of, particularly energy healing that I do. For a lot of it, what does that look like when you actually can't see it but you can feel it, that sort of thing. So there's just concepts that I'm playing with too, and just other dimensions and other realities, I suppose, that we might not be able to see, feel or hear, just, but they're there. So all those aspects are probably coming into my artwork, and that is hence the transpersonal, being beyond the person. Well, I think it started really when I was a child. There was certain things that I had premonitions about, and I knew certain things were going to happen before they happened. I just thought everyone did that. So that's where it started, and I really didn't understand what was going on. I remember questioning myself, thinking, did I make that happen, or did I just know it was going to happen? So that was probably more or less as a young teenager that started. But I think the real turning point for me, funny enough, was when I started doing my artwork. So there was definitely a big shift for me, being out of my thinking mind, and when I had painted for long periods of time, for days on end, it's just putting yourself in the other hemisphere of the brain, and there's something started to happen in that space, more so. And because I always thought all I wanted to do was paint at that particular time, and I just wanted to be an artist. And then I realised that I wanted to do a bit more than that. So I started getting insight about using creativity and also trying to help people. And I coined the frame back then, I really wanted to do art but therapy as well, and combine the two. So after kind of coining that frame and not even knowing what it was, going to a local shop where I was in a marketplace trying to see if I could get a stall to sell my artwork, and picked up a free magazine, and it had an advertisement for art therapy, and I think it was 2 weeks after I actually kind of came up with that term. So I knew that course was for me, and I'd have to say that spiritual journey and was all through, started with my art therapy course actually, and before that it was with my art. I actually painted for about 2 years on and off, so but more consistently than ever. And I think that was the turning point. Okay, my subject matter. Initially when I started painting, it was very much linked to how I was living at the time. So I was a flight attendant for Qantas and international, so I was obviously doing a lot of flying in a plane. And in doing so, I just looked on the countryside and the abstract patterns that I got from just the landscape really. So I started getting ideas for more of an abstract feel for big landscapes, rather than doing a landscape on how it looks normally. It was the above ground, above version of that. So it was more the textures and patterns that I was concentrating on, and because my background sort of started with design more than anything, and it just sort of grew from there. But now I've come back to my art, I find again it's what I'm involved in, with my work. So I suppose my work really sort of leads me into what I start creating. So I'm doing a lot of kinesiology, I do a lot of healings, I run groups like with art therapy. And so I'm dealing a lot with energy and spirit and things like that. So my artwork now is more or less being channeled in that way. Yeah. So again, it's actually going back more to design rather than what things look like in the, in our world, so to speak. Okay, my favourite paintings. These are these are the newest paintings that I've been doing. As I said, it was the Mandalas. That one, the lotus leaf, I actually started that first before any of these mandalas eventuated, and that was kind of like my symbol of creativity and getting back to my own creativity. So all this was sort of birthed from that painting. But I have to say, from the mandalas, I'm really drawn to this one here, it's the heart space for me. So it's the mandala on the heart. Yeah. So it's more or less trying to get the heart to open up. That's really what the symbology was behind that one. I'd have to say my father was a big influence for me. He probably introduced me to drawing and painting. He had an artistic background, and I can remember as a child in my bedroom, he ended up doing this massive mural on my wall. So it was something that, I don't know, I can just always remember that. And from there, he influenced me big time. And whenever I drew anything or painted anything, I'd always take it to him. So he had a really good eye. After that, I'd have to say people that encouraged me were, I'd have to say my son's father. And he just sort of held the space for me to actually sort of delve into my painting. And again, he had a really good eye. So it would be more or less a collaboration where I'd be painting for hours on end. And there'd be like a commentary, or sometimes you can push a painting too far. And he was aware of that with me. So he would often say, just stop, just step back, you need to stop, or he would just sort of guide me with that. Apart from that, artists, I'm into a lot of design. So it started off with Art Nouveau, I think, and from there, just artists that jump out at me is like Picasso. It's the Impressionists. I did all that sort of thing. I was interested in those when I was growing up. It's just, I can appreciate all types of art, so I can't sort of say one artist in particular. It's sort of what grabs my eye at the time. And it can just be something online, where it's a painting that I see and it sort of inspires me, so, yeah. Majority of my painting has just always been acrylic on canvas, and I've usually always built up the canvas with a lot of texture and collage, which I'll add to this eventually. This is a series of 3. I tend to use acrylics just because they're just easier. I find them less toxic rather than oil paints, and not having to use terps and things like that to clean the brushes. It's just a simpler process. I've also used a lot of pastels in the past as well, with just more illustrative work. And the cards that I created, I did those with chalk pastels. But I've always really, I like the acrylic. I just find it just an easier medium to work with. The layers of meaning and emotion in my work. Okay, how I'm working now has changed from when I was working before. So now I would say I really just start tapping in. It's like I don't plan it. That's something that I'm not planning at the moment. So I'm doing a lot of mandala work, and I start with the middle piece, and it's more just an unconscious, intuitive response where I start from there, and I will build from that. So it's layered out. So a mandala is like a circle. It's for meditation purposes, and the artworks that I'm doing at the moment are more centered around people's healing, like individual and collective healing. Mandalas are being used for meditation, as I said, and shifting of consciousness. So there's something in that for me where I just allow the process to take place, and at times I just sort of step back and see where it's at, and I'm kind of curious myself where it's going. So it's not something that I'm thinking consciously about, but it's just naturally unfolding. And it's a process that I'm just discovering myself now, probably. And, you know, there is times where you've got to think about balance and how it looks and the structure of it, but on the whole, it's more or less channeled, I suppose. It's coming from a different place. Yeah. Yeah, this mandala is the last of 3, and to be honest with you, I actually feel like it's related to my own journey, actually, my own healing. So, yeah, it's a lot of my personal experience. That's what I've found with the other mandalas that I've been doing. In looking at them when they're finished, it's like I can really relate to, it's basically where I'm at, in a sense. How do I keep motivated to create? I don't think I have to keep motivated. I just think it's self-perpetuating. I probably actually, if the more that you're inspired by others, I find that if you're going online or you're going to galleries or things like that, which I don't do enough of, but if it dries up a bit, I find that's a way to get inspired. It's just surrounding yourself with that, really. And just always looking for ideas. Nature's also a way to do that. But generally, there's just so much for me at the moment. I'm not really coming to that point. But in the past, it has been, literally just going to galleries, seeing what other people are doing, and you always get ideas and keep it flowing that way. Yeah. Okay, off the top of my head, the most important thing in my life would be my son. He's the priority for me. After that, I would say it is definitely my painting at the moment, and just pouring myself into that in every chance I can get. It's also my other work that I do, particularly with running groups and doing a lot of meditation and running art therapy groups, wellbeing groups, and we do a lot of connective things, like with people, just sort of giving them the space to actually connect to themselves and think about their life, and the art therapy is great for that, in people just getting their own answers. So I find that a lot of fun, actually, doing the group work with people. So I'd have to say that's really taking up my space at the moment, and what drives me. A certain goal I'd like to reach. I'd love to have another exhibition. That's something that I really am aiming for. I'd love to start selling my works again. There's been a big gap for me when I was painting beforehand, and now I've kind of got that resurgence. I'd love to get back into that. So any galleries out there or any dealers? Other than that, I think I'd like to do actually some speaking, and just being an advocate, actually, of creativity and how it's really missing from our education system and just in people's lives generally, and what that's doing. I just find that people are really kind of running disconnected in their heads, and just the value of creativity and bringing people back to themselves, and it's actually really healing. So some forum for that, I think, would be a goal in the future. Yeah, just do art. You just got to do it and not think about it, and keep it in some sort of routine. At the moment, like, I'm really time poor because I've got a young son, and there's a lot of other work that I do as well. Although it's still creative, I've got to fit the artwork in overnight. So I find that when he goes to bed, I'm fitting it in just when I can fit it in, and it's more or less I'm being a bit more disciplined about that. Where I think years ago, and like what some people do, is that they wait to feel inspired, and it's like, I don't feel like doing it. And I've also been in that slump. But if you just set that time to yourself and keep that in routine and just keep doing it, it will flow. It'll start to flow again. So I think, just keep doing the art, really. Yeah, the classes I teach, they're basically wellbeing classes, but they're centered around self-development and also intuitive development. So I use a lot of art therapy-based exercises, and we use like divination cards as well. The the basis of the classes are for people, it's more or less mapping their life and getting their own answers. So it's like delving into art therapy through their own symbols, and it's the unpacking of the image that actually gives them their answers. It's not the drawing itself, although that's relaxing. It's when they combine in a group and they reflect on each other's drawing, that's where you really get the underlying unconscious elements that are really coming up for them. So they get a lot of understanding, they get a lot of new insights, just viewing their life in a different way and getting answers to things, you know. Usually the classes are themed, so I will start with a theme. There'll be meditation, starting off with that, and then I'll find whatever the theme of the day is. It's more or less I get that idea from the beginning, and we do maybe an art exercise on that, and they do a lot of sharing, and then from that they're using their intuition to give more insights to each other. So it's an unfolding process, and they find that when they leave, every exercise is sort of built on each other, sort of to give them just new ideas, I think, about where they're going and what they're doing in life and things that they've also got to work on. So a lot of it is, for the self-development, is like what's holding them back and why, and getting some understanding around that. So, yeah, these are, I'll just choose a few here. These are the divination cards. They're my own that I created, but I also use a lot of decks from others, and it's really about not necessarily, a lot of the divination cards actually have the meaning on the front. So when I created these, I actually purposely left that out. So what it is, they actually go into the image of the card itself. So they have to look in to the image and see what jumps out at them. So they're actually reading symbols, and the imagery starts to speak to them rather than reading a card and the meaning for it. So it's basically hooking into their own intuition that way.